Hey everyone, welcome to the Manitoba YBN interview series. My name is Miran and I'm the current co-chair of the Manitoba Young Broker Network. Today we have a very special guest joining us, Tina Osen, who's the president of the Canadian operation at Hub. And at some level, maybe 5 levels above or so, I think you're my boss. I don't know if I'm right on that. But
maybe, but that's, I'd like to think it as more somebody who's trying to support you in what you're doing, Miran.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. But yeah, Tina, we have obviously a whole list of questions here. I think let's get right into it. First of all, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself outside of insurance?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Vancouver. I'm actually the daughter of a father who had a successful entrepreneurial insurance brokerage in the greater Vancouver area. I still live here today, with the exception of a year in Toronto that I did in the early days of my career. I have a husband named Claudio. We've been married now 23 years, together 33 years, so long time together. And we have 2 daughters, Isabel, who's 20 and at 3rd year UBC, and Katie, who's 16 and in grade 11. And, in terms of sort of some of the stuff I do outside of the insurance industry, we were laughing. We just ran this contest, which you would be familiar with, about sort of Hub's Got Talent, and my family was laughing at me because they really said, "Mom, I don't think you have any talents for this. That's what you do." But I do like being active. So love hiking, love biking, walking. This summer, tons of paddleboarding and tennis, and I started playing golf again after 20 years away from it because it just was too much with young kids. And avid reader, and honestly just a passionate traveler. So if there's anything that has been a struggle for me in this pandemic, it's the inability to go travel the world and explore.
Yeah, I hear you. Traveling, I think for anyone in business, I had an old boss say, always take at least 2 weeks off a year and go somewhere, right? Because it takes it 3 days to forget about work, and then getting towards the end of that vacation, 3 days before, you're starting to remember work, right? So you need that period where you're really disconnected. And no, I share that view with you, just in terms of enjoying it, but I think it's also really important just to develop, right? Giving yourself that break and opportunity to enjoy the finer things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. You will not see me driving a fancy car. It's kind of the joke, but you will always know in a non-pandemic world, I always have my next 2 vacations planned. It's the recharge, exactly like you just said.
Yeah. I'm not at that level. I'm about 1 a year, but a couple more years, maybe we can do that, 2 a year. That'd be awesome. So I just want to read some, obviously you're part of a ton of different initiatives, not just at Hub. Being the president at Hub, it's a very senior role and it comes with a lot of responsibility, but I'm just going to name some of the things that you're involved with and kind of spin that back into the question I want to ask you. But being the president of Hub International Canada, we're the largest brokerage in Canada. And with that, you're responsible for 6 different Hub entities, right, throughout Canada.
Right.
We obviously as well have Hub Financial, Totten Insurance Group, the Canture wholesale operations. You got a lot of commitments outside of insurance, such as sitting on the faculty advisory board of the Sauder School of Business at the University of BC. You were the former chapter chair for the Young Presidents Organization in Vancouver, a past director on the Vancouver Board of Trade, and like you alluded to earlier, on top of all of that, a mother to 2. So how do you find it in you to balance all those responsibilities?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, just full disclosure, I want to be very clear that one of the reasons why this has worked so well for our family is that my husband made the decision many years ago, after a very successful career as a professional chef, to come home and be a stay-at-home dad so I could pursue my career. And
Wow.
that was phenomenal for me. Also just because he's a phenomenal chef, and that took all the meals off of my shoulders, which my whole family breathes a collective sigh of relief that I'm not doing the cooking. But, beyond that, I think it absolutely has been, for me, it sounds so simple, but the reality is I schedule everything. So if it is, making sure I get an exercise or get date nights with my husband or doing things with my kids, all of that is built into my calendar. And I also do annual goal setting and planning and really reflect on, what worked well in the prior year and what isn't working well. So, and that can be both professionally and personally. But if I give you a personal story, I was laughing because in 2019, the reality, it was just a really busy year at work, and wasn't spending enough time with my husband. We weren't doing regular date nights. And so we made a commitment, okay, this year, regular date nights, quarterly weekend away, even if it's just local. And obviously, we then got hit with a pandemic, and sort of some of the plans changed. Probably now my husband and my kids, for that matter, are thinking, my goodness, she is around way too much. But, really focusing on making sure in that goal setting that just taking a moment to reflect and say, where do I need to tweak and adjust? Kind of to your comment about balance, I don't know if I've ever felt balanced. I always struggle with that word a little bit, because I don't think you ever feel quote unquote balanced if you look at sort of a single point in time. But I always look at sort of more holistically in the last month. How was I doing at work? Sometimes work is firing more. Sometimes I've got pulls with, my parents, but what do I need to do to focus that energy and make sure that everything's getting the attention? So that's kind of how I've approached it.
Yeah. I mean, I can say for myself, being a younger broker, particularly, I found throughout my career, I always feel super, not lost, but just overwhelmed at times between the career, obviously, but educational things we do, even on the Young Broker Network, a couple other organizations I'm involved with. And to me, I always come back, I'm sure I don't set as many goals as you do and have that reflection period. But if I look back at time and I see where I am today and do that in any moment, I can see that I've moved that marker a bit further. And for me, that's always important to remember, because even today, for the working day, it was not crazy, nonstop, talking to clients, prospects, issuing certificates, sending copy of wordings of clients challenging me. But when you stop and just kind of really think about what you've done that day and that week, that month, that year, that's really important to self-reflect once in a while. So I think that's a great approach. I mean, I don't have the work plate that you do, obviously, but it's great to hear the way you do it. I'm sure we can all apply that to ourselves.
I think that ability to just sort of check in and be able to pat yourself on the back once in a while and not beat ourselves up, which we're so good at all doing at different times. And I think also being able to say no. I mean, I did not do this well when I was, early in my career. So it's learning how to pick your spots too. And I think that comes as you gain a little bit more confidence or build up that sort of stock in terms of your currency in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. With age comes wisdom, as they say. I know when I was 19, I thought I knew it all, and 21, I still thought I knew it all. But with some more years here, I realized how much more there is to know, and it's never going to get easier, right? It's just how you adjust and make something of that.
Right.
But no, great stuff. So being involved in so many different things, right? In the industry, outside of the industry, what type of benefit did you see just for your professional development by being participating in all those different things?
Yeah, so much. And I will tell you, by nature, I'm a bit of an introvert. I would actually describe myself as a sociable introvert. So in the early stages of my career, networking was pretty painful for me to do. But what I will tell you is that what I've really learned is networking provides growth. And if you can create these opportunities to hang with a different group of people that you don't necessarily work with or might not be in the same business, it opens you up to this diversity of thought and experience that I think has really helped me to look at things in different ways and be open to considering other approaches to a problem or a challenge. And a side benefit when we're in insurance and we're dealing with customers is you build these relationships. Often these relationships ultimately become decision makers at businesses or, active members in the community that help you long-term grow your business. I think the other thing, some of the organizations that I've been part of really are starting to focus on, to be effective in your career, you need to be an effective human being. And when I say effective, what I simply mean is you need to look at how you're approaching your personal life and how's your life with your family. And if those things aren't working well, they can really have an impact on what you put out at work. So I joined this organization called YPO. It was a group of presidents. It's an international organization, and the organization was formed based on the premise that it's lonely as a CEO sometimes, and you often need a safe place to share ideas and your strategies and get external points of view because you can't always talk about it with others. And when I joined the organization, I went into it, being candid, as an opportunity to generate leads to sell insurance to and help develop my business. I wasn't thinking about personal and family. But what it's done is it's created this level of accountability for me because I've told my peers things that I want to commit to, in those regards. For example, I want to do a 10K race, or I want to do a biking trip with my family, or whatever it might be. And it's created this level of accountability. And also I think, sometimes the people that you're friends with, they look like us, they feel like us. Yeah. But when you get in these networking groups, you're put together with a group of people that don't necessarily look like you or respond the same way or feel like us. And it's really those people that I feel in my life I've actually learned the most from, because the people that look the same as me, feel the same, think the same way, we don't necessarily broaden our thought process. But when you're choosing or being part of a dialogue with people that don't do that, you actually garner these really deep insights. And I go, yeah, I wouldn't have even considered that. That was so smart. So, so many benefits from doing that outside networking.
Yeah. And, I'm sure you were involved in a ton of stuff, especially early on in your career, but I can speak for myself, just when it comes to trying to build that commercial book of business, right? It takes, get to know the industry you're trying to sell into, right? Go to their association events, join those, participate as much as you can. But do you think beyond the direct, I'm growing my book of business, great perk, obviously, but is there any other type of benefit you see young brokers having by really putting themselves out there and participating in these things?
Well, I mean, certainly, as you said, growing the book of business, but I think it's everything. It's presentation skills. It's having the confidence to enter a room with people you don't know and learn how to communicate effectively. It's supporting communication skills. It's supporting your listening skills, taking the time to hear what somebody else has to say, learn their viewpoints. So all of those things, I think, build up sort of this inherent sort of confidence in us that makes each time as a young broker, you stepping into those situations that might make you feel a little comfortable, just that much stronger at doing it. And whether you're in sales or whether you're in some other piece of the business, being able to sort of confidently communicate is such a transferable skill that will apply in so many aspects of the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know, when I started going to my first networking events, I was so nervous, just like you were going into them, or hours before I'm considering not showing up or making an excuse not to go. But maybe you have a different answer to this. But for me, what worked was just detach yourself from the outcome, right? You're going into a room where they don't know you yet anyway, right? So what could you possibly do to make that worse? Not a whole lot, assuming you conduct yourself in a professional manner, but detach yourself from the outcome and believe in yourself in the sense that you actually bring value, right? And I think especially, I'm a young broker, but when I talk to some of the young brokers here who are kind of newer to commercial, having them disconnect from that thought that everything's a sale, right? And it's not a sale always, right? It can just be an introduction. So take that pressure off yourself and create an introduction, because you don't know by planting that seed what that can grow into in the future. And it's when you really, and that was even tough for me, because I'm a career salesman, right? I've never been in a non-sales role since I was 16. So it was always sell, sell, sell. How do you maximize every deal? Especially in retail, you don't want people walking out empty-handed. So coming to insurance and then trying to make that transition where, okay, you're not a salesman anymore. Like the sales component is still there and is a very important skill, but you got to turn the table and become a trusted advisor now, right? And it's a long game, right? You got to nurture relationships for years at some time before you even get an opportunity. And I've been in it now for about 3 years, and I'm already starting to see some of that dividends from year one come back to me this year, right? And it's exciting because you just think of how it's going to play out in the future and what more is going to come of that, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And ask anyone that knows me. It's interesting. For years, I was in commercial sales. I built a very successful commercial sales career for myself, but I will tell you 100%, I am not the profile. If you ran me through sort of behavioral assessments and profiles, I do not show up as a salesperson. And what I show up as is a relationship person. So my sales cycle on accounts is longer. Maybe not as much so at this point in my career, but certainly in those early days, a longer sales cycle, but it was about building that relationship, demonstrating that value to the customer, making sure, as you said, you became that trusted advisor, and having them have the confidence that, you were there for the long haul, not somebody who's just trying to, close the deal in the first year and then it's kind of one and done and you're not going to care for them. So, that would be a huge piece of advice I'd give anybody. If you can take that sales cycle or that sale to a relationship-based, trusted advisor, professional advisor, you will have those customers stick with you for a long, long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Be a partner, right? Don't be a vendor. That's something that I hear throughout this office, and I try to do that every day. And it's a work in progress, obviously, right? You gotta fail before you win. But I totally agree with everything you're saying. But we'll turn the clock back a bit. So you're the president of the Canadian region now. But how did you initially start your career in insurance?
Certainly. Well, as I mentioned to you, my father had this insurance brokerage in the greater Vancouver area, and I have one sister. And when we were growing up, our parents told us there was an opportunity to join the family business. All this got us was the foot in the door. We had to start in an entry-level position, prove ourselves out from there. And I think, I'd gone to the University of British Columbia, and I was just sort of pretty pragmatic. I saw my dad and how much he loved the insurance business. And we had a reasonably good life. And I thought, well, why wouldn't I give it a try? And I went to go work for him in one of his branch offices. So I was selling ICBC insurance at the counter. And from day one, I absolutely loved the business. But I also realized pretty quickly that there were benefits and disadvantages to being the daughter of the president. And I say that not because my father was involved in my reporting line in any way, but just the perceptions of how people thought, did I deserve to be there or not? So I decided I needed to go somewhere else and get experience, and I moved to Toronto. There was an insurance company, now I'm really dating myself, called Continental Insurance, but you would know it as Northbridge today. And they had this phenomenal national career training program, and they brought in students that had just come out of university and brought them in to train them. Northbridge has reinvigorated the program today. And I learned how to become a commercial lines underwriter for a few years. And after 3 years away, my father's chief operating officer at the time reached out to me and asked if I wanted to come back on board as a commercial marketer. And I made the leap. That lasted a month. And then we had a producer. I kind of chuckle because we wouldn't call him a producer today. The book of business was only about $30,000 in commission, but they left the industry altogether. And I took on that book and started sales and then went into management. So that was, sort of the background of how it came to be. Interestingly, my sister also joined the business, and I have to say, she did not love the business, and now has a very successful retail clothing store in Vancouver. So, it's not for everybody, but it's been a great journey for me.
Yeah, no, sounds like it. I know what you mean. Not directly when you say, like, obviously your father was so successful and you working for the same organization. I can, just for a quick story, at a company I worked at, they were a TELUS dealership, right? So I had several TELUS retail stores. And I remember they were telling me, yeah, we're going to put you at this one location where it's actually the owner's son who manages it. And in my head, my first thought was, oh, the owner's son? Like, what kind of, just, I didn't have high expectations. I thought he'd be snobby and just entitled and all these things. But the day I met him, and he's, that was 6 years ago, and we're still pretty good friends today. Just his work ethic and obviously knowing that was his father's business, he really put a lot of effort into that, right? And he wanted to make his dad proud. And I learned that lesson pretty young, that, you don't judge a book by its cover like that, because obviously it could be the case, but I really, I had to eat my words on that one internally, because we became good friends, and he really was a standout employee. You take away the relationship of that being his father's company, he was a all-star employee, right? And I really appreciate people that can pull that off, right? Because it's tough. I mean, especially if you do live a better lifestyle. But I think it comes down to kind of what you were saying about your dad, how right from the beginning you had to start from the very beginning, right? We're not going to put you in at COO immediately. Like, you got to start from the ground up and prove yourself. Yeah. So I definitely commend him for that, because it sounds like it paid a ton of dividends for you just with your experience.
Yeah, thank you.
So, insurance career has been pretty sophisticated. You've obviously seen a lot of stuff, but what was it that made you decide to stay in the industry long term and really make the career you have today out of it?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, it's a people business, and I love people. And so even though I say I'm an introvert, I love building relationships with people. And You know, our industry is one, we have amazing people within the industry, but also, you know, by virtue of everyone needing insurance, you deal with people from all kinds of industries and walks of life. And I could see the possibilities for my career because there's so many paths you can take in this business, be it personal insurance or commercial insurance or benefits or life insurance.
Yeah.
And also, you know, where in the business you go. Are you client facing, sales role? You can take operations paths, pursue marketing, or use your negotiation skills working with carriers. And so I think I stayed because it just felt to me like the sky was the limit in terms of the opportunities that were there. And, you know, everybody needs insurance. The world doesn't move without people purchasing insurance. And so there was also just, again, that sort of practical side. It's got all these opportunities, it's got great people, and it's something that people will need. So, you know, I think this pandemic has proved, I would never say we're recession proof, but we certainly are more recession proof than a lot of other businesses. So it's such a great opportunity for young people getting into the industry.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. You know, that was the big appeal for me. My cousin was in the industry prior to me, and he knew I loved sales, and I was doing commercial sales in a different industry, and he kind of explained to me that idea of, you know, you build a book and you can grow that year over year, and you get rate, and it sounded so good to me, right? And I had a little of imposter syndrome in the beginning, thinking, I'm young, you know, I'm not university educated. I don't know if I can do this. But I think coming into it has been the best decision I've ever made, because the experience I gained in my old brokerage and now being at Hub here, especially in Winnipeg's head office, I just feel so lucky to be here, right? That the people that they surrounded me with Kathleen, as I know you know very well, but Ryan Matthews, Kelvin Olson, ton of people that are so willing to mentor, and you know, they don't look at you for that resume paper. They try to look at the potential you have, right? And every day I come into the office, I'm always reminded of that, like that opportunity I have to be here. And it's exactly what you said. Just from the top to bottom, there's true opportunity in here, and how intertwined the industry is in every facet of life. We're here to stay, right? And there'll be changes, absolutely, but those who can adapt, and we've seen that with Hub, obviously, in this pandemic, just the response that, whether it be the webinars or the Coronavirus Resource Center, being part of an organization like this that provides those services to the clients, it was really nice to see, you know, and it feels great to be part of the team.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'll ask you a bit of a personal question here. So, you know, you've been in the industry for a while. You alluded to, you know, your dad gave you that first opportunity, but who would you say your biggest role model was throughout your whole career, and what was the most memorable lesson that they taught you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sorry because it does feel cliche, but it absolutely is my dad. And I should say that I have had many, many role models, and I could share so many lessons, but there's a few things that my dad imparted on me that have just stuck with me always. The first is just have fun. You know, if we're going to do this for a living, and we're going to spend so much time at work and channel so much energy in it, have fun, create opportunities for your team to have fun, because if not, why are you doing it? I think the other thing, absolutely, they always said is be kind. My dad didn't judge. He truly loved all people. And it didn't matter who someone was, where they came from, what their background was. He would always value them and respect their opinion. And I think what that really translated into is him teaching me to be open and truly listening to people, and not making the mistake of judging a book by its cover. And then you know, he had a couple of cheesy expressions. One is "Don't cry for me, Argentina." My name's Tina, so that was partly a play on words for me. But you know, really, like just that whole notion of, you know, when I would complain, "Don't cry for me, Argentina," but challenging me to reframe that problem and ask what I was doing to contribute to the problem. So, not blaming others, but what could I do to influence it to a more positive outcome? And then just this notion, both my parents, squeaky wheel getting the grease. So, they both really tried to emphasize to my sister and I that the person that, you know, started the day 30 minutes early and stayed 30 minutes later really would have tremendous success, and that you don't need to put a lot of hard work in to really have big impact.
Yeah. No, those sound like great lessons. I'm sure he was a great man with everything he taught you. It's very apparent with the way you come across that those lessons are ingrained in you, and then you obviously live them to today, right? And always keeping that in your mind. So, you know, you talked, obviously your father was a huge role model for you, but, you know, I think you're also a huge role model for particularly women in this industry, right? Being in such a senior role for the largest brokerage in North America. What advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders?
Yeah, so certainly this advice applies to women, but I think it also applies to men. And you know I've learned some hard lessons in my journey that if I had the benefit of this knowledge and someone telling me this, I might have not made a few mistakes. But you know, I think the first thing is, and I think this is an important one for women, always be authentic to who you are. You know, don't try to be what you think people want you to be. Be true to yourself. You will come across more genuine and real. Don't be guarded. I think, you know, a mistake I see a lot of people making is when you put up that guard, you don't allow your vulnerabilities to show. And being more transparent and being willing to sort of show your vulnerabilities, show your flaws and all, people will find you more trustworthy and more genuine, and they'll be more inclined to want to follow you when you own up to the things that you messed up or show that side of yourself. So definitely that authenticity, that sort of trustworthy, genuine. One thing that I am certainly guilty of, and you know, it's not apologizing for my ideas if they're not with the status quo. So I made this mistake a lot when I was younger, and I've even up until recent years, and I had it pointed out to me, and I'm really trying to work on this, but not to undermine yourself by putting a caveat in front of a sentence. So if I had a dime for every time I've said something like, "I don't mean to be a negative Nelly, but have you considered X?" Right. Instead of just saying, "Have you considered?" So without intending to, I'm diminishing my idea before I even say it. And why is my idea worth any less than somebody else's idea? So that one's been a huge learn for me. And then I think for everybody, women and men, find your voice. People want to hear it. So always be respectful, but don't be afraid to voice that alternative opinion or an idea, that to sort of, you know, challenging the status quo. Raise your hand. Offer to be the person that steps up and does a presentation. Create those opportunities to make yourself visible, because if you don't voice those opinions, if you don't ask for opportunities in your career, don't assume that someone's going to give it to you. You have to make yourself visible. You have to share that with people.
Right. Great advice. And no, I agree to both women and men, but you know, you certainly are looked at as a role model in my eyes anyway, being in such a leadership position. And I think people, you know, the message you just said, I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. And even for myself, you know, don't be afraid to speak up. That's a big one for me. You know, I know it took me, I'm always kind of, whenever I start a new company, you kind of, you wait it out a bit, feel it out, who's kind of the loud people, and you don't want to step on any toes. But I can't speak for every office or every brokerage, but I found it in this industry compared to other ones that there's a lot more of that, right? Where people are receptive to hearing and challenging each other, but it's all in the betterment of the operation, the client, the market relationship, whatever the case is. But no, those are great points you brought up. Really appreciate that.
Miran, can I just lend one other suggestion that I forgot and I should have mentioned it? You asked me before about mentor, but I also think there's a really important function in what I call those people that are willing to champion for you. So, a mentor is like that experienced, trusted advisor who you watch in action and you learn from them, and they're phenomenal. And I don't want to take anything away from a mentor. I've had, as I said, many. But I think really important as young people to find the champions in the organization. And those are the people that believe in what you're doing. They believe in your talents, your worth, your ability to go far. And they publicly support you and promote you and help lobby for your success. And you can't just go up to somebody and say, will you be my champion? But if you show somebody what you're capable of, then inevitably those people will support and help promote your advancement.
Yeah, I agree totally. It's perhaps a little tougher done than said, but that's a great point you bring up. And especially as young brokers, I think if you start doing that now, because you don't know, even in our own young broker committee, right? We've seen members switch from this brokerage to this brokerage, or go from this line of work to this line of work. And like I said, I've only been in it 3 years, but it's amazing to see where people land, right, in that short period of time. And I try to think about, what's that going to look like 5 years from now, or 10 years, 20, 30 years from now, right? So I try, admittedly, sometimes can be a bit stubborn. I think Alexa on the call would agree with that. But I always try to be nice at the end of the day, that, we might disagree. I'm going to have my voice and say what I truly believe, even if it's unpopular, but it's not personal, right? And I hope that we can always be friends outside of whatever conflict we had, right? But especially in a board setting, I think that's needed, right? You alluded to that earlier. You don't want people that are just agreeing with everything you say, right? You want people to push you and challenge you, question why you think that way, or whatever the case is, right? But that's certainly something I could do a better job at. I know early on in my career, not even in insurance, but I was so attached to the outcome, right? And I said it earlier, how now I try to be detached from the outcome, but I would always be so attached to the outcome. And, if a team member wasn't up to par on something, or, the carrier in that business had failed me in some way, I would take it so personal, right? Whereas today, I just think, put the value on yourself, right? You got to trust the people around you, and it should be smooth sailing, right? You're gonna hit storms once in a while, but as long as people trust you and like you and want to do business with you, you'll get through it, right? Whereas before, I could have maybe been hammering a bit too much, but I've tried to make that adjustment now, and I think, just like I said, right, with age comes wisdom, and I need a lot more, and I hope I get a lot more with more years to come. But that's definitely important, everything you said there. So you said so many great points there, been part of so many aspects of this industry. But if you were to look at the whole picture of it, what would you say the biggest challenge you faced in your career has been so far?
Yeah, this is such a hard question. I mean, I've faced so many challenges in the business, and I think I will say, I think that the benefit of my years of experience in the business makes me not get bothered by challenges very often anymore, provided I know we're doing the best possible job. So, if we're having troubles placing an account, or a customer's getting upset about customer service, or whatever that might be, those challenges are kind of par for the course now, and I don't lose a lot of sleep over them. But and I also think challenges really, I've always tried to frame them in terms of being an opportunity, and back to that growth comment, they create growth. But there's no doubt, and it totally sounds like a cliche, but for me this year was a big challenge. It started with this pandemic, and I just feel like I'm coming out breathing a bit better now. But there were so many things thrown at not just me, but our leadership teams, our employees across the country. So, navigating people working from home, making sure that none of our employees lost their jobs due to an economic downturn and not knowing what's coming around the corner, worried about customers. I'm almost 30 years in the business. A lot of our customers, certainly out in the Vancouver area, I'm friends with, and some of them, their businesses have been shuttered. So watching them go through that, extremely challenging. And then combine that with the worst market in the property and casualty insurance industry that I've ever seen, and the strain and the exhaustion that it's created for so many people in the commercial P&C space just to take care of their customers from a capacity standpoint daily. And then layer onto that, everything that our Black colleagues experienced this year in terms of just horrible trauma and the continuing sort of systemic racism. And then how do we at Hub make sure that our working environments not only reflect diversity, but support all of our population and truly are inclusive populations, and learning sort of these things around, how I can be a better ally for all groups of our employees and help build a community of allies at Hub. This year's just had a lot that's come at us. And I wouldn't say it may be challenged because it's just different. It's not the usual challenges that have kind of come at us. A pandemic, no one had preparation for that. So it's being sort of thrown off kilter, and then making sure that we do the right thing for our clients and for our employees. And yet, I think this year is amplifying so many wonderful things in our organization, so many tremendous things about the value propositions we've invested in, the talent we have. And so, as I said, back to my earlier comment, problems illuminate to me opportunities. I think we're going to garner so much opportunity and be a even better organization once we get out of all of this crazy year that we've all experienced.
Yeah. For me, I've been in it 3 years, and when I first started, they were talking about the hard market, particularly on the horizon. It's happening. But working with Kathleen, she has a property management book for anyone unfamiliar. That's probably the most affected line of business right now, right? When you talk about capacity and these rate increases that are mandated across the board. But the way I've kind of taken that is, it's the ultimate training ground for myself anyway, right now.
Yeah.
I got 30 years left, 40 years, maybe, who knows, left in this industry, right? And if I can start when it's historically, what I've been told, the worst it's ever been, I think that's it. you're going to get a solid base of knowledge through that, right? And if it happens again 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you never know. We'll be ready for that.
I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I was just going to say I think you're absolutely bang on, and you and your peers that are in this business right now at this early stage in your life and career journey, you are going to be much better at what you did than folks that haven't had those experiences. It's the ultimate training ground right now.
Yeah. And we talked off record, but I joined Hub right when the pandemic really came to Canada, and particularly Manitoba. So just natural fear of they might start cutting employees. I'm new, I'm on probation, but immediately from the get-go, just making that commitment that we're not going to lay anyone off. And Mark Cohen, every time I see one of his emails, I get some neck hair standing on the back of my neck because his messages are always powerful, and you really feel kind of like, not to be cheesy, but the Hub family, right? And how strong we are as a brokerage. I know as a newer employee, it's something I really, really appreciated, and seeing you guys take the initiatives for diversity and making it more of an open culture for anyone that might feel discriminated in any way. I think that's big. And in 2020, you see that with a lot of companies. And I think from the brokerage side, I don't think it's crazy to say that Hub's kind of leading the charge on all of those things.
Trying to.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about, obviously the challenges there, but with everything you're involved with, you got 2 teenage girls, who I'm sure take up a lot of your time. But at this point in your career, right, you've done so much, you've already had so much success. What motivates you to keep going? And, what's your goal for the future? If that can be a 2-parter.
Sure. So motivating me to keep going, I think in the early part of my career, it was that thirst of learning. And, it's funny when I said I don't profile as a salesperson. I also am not maybe what you might describe as that type A sort of CEO, but I'm extremely goals and results driven. And so certainly for many, many years, I think it was the desire to set targets and bust through them. And now, at this point in my career, it's shifting a bit. Certainly, I still am totally goals and results driven. And so you ask what's next, like on a professional level. Canada Hub, we're sitting at about a run rate of $760 million in commission and fee income. And so certainly a professional goal is to bust through that $1 billion commission and fee mark by 2023. So that still fires me up. But I think, really now it's more about building. And when I say building, investing in talent, doing acquisitions, bringing resources, new skill sets to the team that create sort of that discernible value proposition for our people to be able to win more and garner long-term sort of customer support. And then even more so, like a huge motivator for me at this point in my career is making sure that I'm contributing to building a company that not only is sustainable, but that's going to thrive in the future so that people like you can have wonderful long-term opportunities for your career, and being able to see people succeed, and have that growth in their career. That personally is so fulfilling for me. So, yes, results orientated, but absolutely the other stuff about seeing that growth in people, that to me now is what really there is nothing that excites me more than seeing you having this opportunity today to do this with the Manitoba Young Brokers, and seeing our team, get promotions and grow and kill it in presentations, and just, I love it.
Yeah. Well, $1 billion in revenue by 2023, that sounds ambitious. I hope I can help out with that in a big way. I don't know how much of that I can do personally, but as an organization, I'm sure we can get there.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, just kind of reflect on your whole career here, but what would you say the proudest moment, or the happiest moment of your career has been?
Again, so many moments, but a standout for me, like honestly, the proudest moment for me was in 1996, when my father was named Insurance Person of the Year in the province of British Columbia. It was an absolute night to remember. My sister and I had the opportunity to give him a speech together. And, collectively, our family and his company at the time were so proud of what he accomplished. And then, not to make it about me, but I had the opportunity to be recognized with that same recognition exactly 20 years to the date when my father received that in 2016. And my father had a massive stroke in 2008. So he is in a wheelchair, right side paralyzed, no ability to speak, although cognitively he's there. And unbeknownst to me, 20 years later, they snuck him onto the stage to give me that award. And
Wow.
that's, I get a little choked up when I think about it, but that no doubt was probably one of the best moments of my career.
Yeah, I can imagine that being a tearjerker moment. I don't have any kids myself, or my dad's not in insurance, anything like that. But when you think of that, a lot of things have to go right for that to happen, right? And I can only imagine how proud he was of that, and how proud you felt of that in both scenarios. So that's awesome. That's beautiful. So now, not to get super negative all of a sudden, but what throughout your career, what would you say that it could be a harsh word, but the biggest mistake you made? That to this day you might still be slapping yourself about, or thinking, if I just did it this way, is there one in mind that still kind of irks you?
Oh, there's just too many mistakes to point to one. What I will say to you, there's a couple that certainly come to mind. One of them I would say to you is, my spidey senses were up around an individual that worked for us, and just feeling like the integrity wasn't there, but they produced good results for us. And, quite frankly, I ignored my spidey senses because they drove revenue for us. And I thought, I don't want to lose that. And at the end of the day, the lesson to myself was trust your spidey senses. They left. I call it sort of orchestrating the coup, but within sort of 48 hours, we'd had a couple of $1 million of business roll off the books, and they'd gone somewhere else. But I've had a lot of mistakes, and I would say in a lot of my mistakes, certainly in the first sort of 15, 20 years of my career, there's a pretty consistent theme there. And the theme is me taking too long to make a tough call. When I had a challenge with a member on my team, I tend to be extremely loyal. I tend to ignore some of the blind spots, and historically maybe having avoided some of those constructive conversations that might suggest putting that person on a path for them that wasn't in our business. And it's come to bite me. So I really have worked very hard to try to do better at making tough calls quicker, and knowing that where there's smoke, there's fire. And if those spidey senses are saying, something doesn't feel right, probably those first instincts are usually the right instincts.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely haven't had to have had to make as tough decisions as you have. Certainly not from a career perspective, but I can think of times in my own life where you had that gut feeling initially, but you ignored it, and it came back to realizing, oh, maybe I should have trusted that. So I think we can all relate to that to some degree. So, not to be a negative Nancy again, but I think we touch on a few of these things, but to be where you're at today, right? Being the president of Hub Canada, involved in so many things. What are some of the obstacles that you had to face early on? Were they exterior? Were they more kind of mental barriers you had to break down? But yeah, what were the toughest things you had to overcome to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think we touched on most of them. Certainly in the early days of my career, and I'm so grateful we don't see this very often anymore. But I mean, there were many, many times it was myself in a room with 16, 18, 25 guys. And so having to have or having to give myself the confidence to feel like I belong there and had a spot there. And as I had shared, being that introvert by nature, being able to walk into those rooms and feeling like I could work it and build those networks and connections. But I'm telling you, holy cow, in those early days, there was nothing I hated more than that. I literally used to go into a washroom before an event, stand in front of a mirror, and give myself sort of internal pep talks. I wasn't talking out loud, but in my head, I'm saying, you can do this, Tina. You got this. Don't worry. Like, it's okay. And I think, just playing onto that, not diminishing myself, and giving myself sort of that self-talk to really realize that didn't matter, using that example, if it's me and 20 men in the room or whoever's in the room with you nowadays, whoever's in the room with you, that, and Miran, you said this, many people have feelings of self-doubt, and most of us often question whether we belong to be there or whether we should be there, or are we as smart as, or do we have the right answers? And so, we all have insecurities, and don't question my right to be there. And then, as we talked about before, just getting past my own head to push myself out of my comfort zone and try those different things, sitting on the board, getting involved in the networking. I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but my favorite quote is, did I say this? Eleanor Roosevelt, do something every day that scares you. So,
no, you didn't.
Yeah. So I think, growth comes from being scared. Now, I personally think doing something every day that scares you would be a little too extreme, but you get the point. So I think it's good to try new things. And I think one of the things that I've really learned is it's okay to fail, and you're not going to be good at everything. I'm not good at everything by no measure. And really, failing's okay. And the true failure is not trying at all. So, yeah.
Great advice. No, doing something every day that scares you. Yeah, that's important, right? And it kind of comes back to just stepping outside your comfort zone, and you got to be willing to take the blows as they come, right? So I love that quote. Thanks for sharing that one. We'll just kind of circle back here, with young brokers. Obviously, I'm on the Young Broker Network. Each province has their own network. There's a national Young Broker Network. So I'm really I know this entire interview is going to resonate with so many of them, but what what areas do you see as the biggest opportunity for young brokers going forward?
Sure. Well, first of all, if I haven't made it abundantly clear, I think the brokerage business is an excellent business, and I really, when you look at direct writers and potential disintermediation to the business, I think there's a lot of people now who are starting to really recognize the value of the broker, the value of that advice and counsel and those relationships that we hold. And they're so critical. So I would definitely, as young brokers, focus on your personal brand and value proposition and building an exceptional service proposition and ensuring that clients want to deal with you because they deem you as their trusted advisor. I think there is opportunity for young brokers absolutely around specialization. I personally would say develop a deep knowledge in 2 or 3 areas and bring something to the table that is unique, and don't go a mile wide, go a mile deep in a few areas and really, really know it. The third thing I would say is embrace technology, embrace artificial intelligence. I don't think I really need to say this to a group of young brokers. I probably need to say it more to Gen X's and baby boomers, but yeah. I don't view technology and AI as a threat. I think technology and AI will be a tool that will enhance your value proposition and make each of you much more effective at what you do in the future. I think support and help your brokerage get the right data, collect the data on your customers. Data is going to be, the people that have the data will rule this industry. And capacity and support from markets and new entrants into it will support those brokerages that understand their customer, understand what's driving the losses. So important. And I think, a big opportunity for young brokers to really get behind the brokerage in terms of supporting innovation and recognizing that customers want to be served how you want to be served. So support choice and different ways for them to engage with us. So I don't know. I think those are sort of opportunity areas that I would sort of focus on for somebody coming up in the business.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. When when you talk just about what advice you'd give to a young broker to thrive in their career, right? So you map it out for 10, 20, 30 years. What do you see as the most important things? Is it just networking? I mean, you mentioned specializing, which would, I couldn't agree more with. Professional designations. What do you think is the most important for young brokers to be doing today, or for the next year? Like, what can we do to set ourselves up to lead or to have true success when we're a bit older?
Mm-hmm. So just piggybacking off of what you said there, I would absolutely say, have sort of that insatiable sort of quest for knowledge and learning and understanding. And this is where data and AI can help, but understanding your customer's business, learning that specialty, understanding what challenges or needs a particular segment or industry has, so you really can support them in that way, like, for sure. And then I think, just on a broader, what advice would I give to brokers to thrive in their career? And these may sound a little hokey, but trust me, this is with the wisdom of years. When I look at people that have succeeded in our business, yes, you have to have that technical expertise. Yes, you have to be, a hard worker and demonstrate that work ethic and do all those things. But then there's some maybe other things that I think really kind of fit the description of people that I've seen succeed and have a good career path. So I'll tell you this one story. In 2013, I received a phone call from our global CEO at that time. This was before I was the Canadian president. I was running our Greater Vancouver operations, and we'd set up a new org structure. And our CEO told me that I had a new boss for a newly created position that hadn't existed before. And by the way, my new boss is phenomenal. He's a very good friend of mine, but I was really upset that I hadn't been considered for the role. And I knew I was qualified, more than qualified. And so I asked our CEO why I didn't get that job. And he said to me, and this kind of harkens back to something at the beginning of our interview, he told me that I had never expressed interest in a position beyond where I currently was, which was true. And what a lesson for myself, because until that point in my career, I had always kind of been given the tap and had never had to state that I wanted something. So my advice to everyone would be, if you want to have a good career, you can't rely on other people to give you that tap. You need to speak up, let people know what your goals are, and ask for counsel on what you need to do to achieve those goals. Where do you need to improve? What do you need to work on? What does that look like? The second thing I would say, and this may sound really hokey, so bear with me here, but for those of you young brokers who haven't married or haven't settled on a life partner, I would say to you, choose wisely. And what I mean by that is I cannot tell you how many times I've seen young people have incredible success in their career because they have an unbelievably supportive partner who grows with them and supports them in what they're doing. And conversely, how many times I've seen people sort of stall in their career trajectory because their partner is not aligned with their goals and not wanting to support them in that. So, I've been super lucky. I have a husband that puts up with so much from me, but he's grown with me, and that's been unbelievably powerful. Don't be afraid to put your hand up, build a diverse resume, garner experience in different areas of the business. Sometimes sideways moves aren't bad moves because they bring experience onto your resume that can lead to an ultimate sort of goal or next step in your career. And back to my earlier comments, listen, learn how to be an effective communicator. If you don't feel confident that, I don't even know if they have Toastmasters anymore, but there are courses you can take to become a better public speaker, and listen. Like, have that genuine empathy, be authentic, mean it, care, and don't hesitate to help your team members. So those are, I think, some of my last words of wisdom there, Miran, on that one.
No, that was all wonderful. I mean, I know I speak for the rest of the committee, and I think anyone listening that really appreciated having you on. You shared some incredible stuff, and I know personally that there's a ton that I can take back from this and utilize in my own life to better my career, not only as a professional but as a person. So really, really appreciate having you on, Tina. I know, as you said in the beginning, you're very busy and you're very focused on the calendar. So I'm glad we got scheduled in there, and then we had the opportunity to do this with you. Yeah, I just really appreciate it. And working at Hub, it hasn't been that long now, but knowing that even locally here, the leadership, how great everyone is, and all the way to the top to you here in Canada anyway, it's really reassuring to hear your point of view and the way you run your business and everything you touched on. So again, really appreciate the time, and I I don't know when COVID will be over and maybe you'll come to the Winnipeg office, but I look forward to the opportunity to meeting in person and just seeing how things have gone since.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and it's great. And yes, busy, but I also said I love giving back and seeing others grow in their careers. So, Miran, I'm looking forward to seeing you do exactly that. And I will definitely be in Winnipeg. I talked to Keith Jordan, who is the president in our Winnipeg operations, and we're plotting already to, or looking forward to the day when I get to come back out and travel and see everybody in person. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you.